Okay, I think we are live, my friend. We are totally live. I'm just taking us live on Instagram. Hold on one second.
Gotcha.
Okay, there we go. We are live on all. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast. Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm a bit overwhelmed. A lot,
I know.
a lot going on. I'm getting bombarded with. I have emails like they're falling on me like confetti, and press releases, and this and that. Let's face it, it's a first world problem. But holy cow, is Saratoga this week? We knew it was going to happen, right? But it's here,
Yeah.
and it's like a pie in my face. Like holy cow!
Just the traffic alone, I'm like losing it just with the traffic. Which
I
is
haven't
not.
noticed that yet. I haven't caught that yet, but I'm sure by this time tomorrow I will be.
I think it's like a downtown where I live issue. You know what I mean? I'm like
Okay.
always in the. But you can just tell there's a lot of out of town drivers here who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, wait till Saturday.
I know. So we've been on a teeny bit of a hiatus, which I have to apologize for because that was mostly my fault. I was traveling. My brother got married in San Francisco. But I'm back, although we're missing Adam today. But hopefully we will be together next week. But in the meantime, we have a lot to talk about.
Oh my God, yeah. It's
So much.
Saratoga. Of course we have got a lot to talk about.
I know. So should we start with the city council recap? Because we did have a city council meeting last night.
Yes, and you caught all of it. I caught only a portion of it, a small portion, but a relevant portion, and we'll talk about that down. So why don't you kick it off?
So I did catch all of it. And I have to say, I was like cleaning the second floor, like upstairs in my house, listening to it on my headphones. And I thought I'd be doing like a light clean, it'd be like kind of a standard council meeting. By like 9:30 or 9:40, when it finally wrapped up, I had like cleaned the entire second floor. I had to take a shower afterwards because I was like all sweaty. I was like, okay, I was not prepared for this type of meeting. But basically it started off with on Monday when they had their pre-agenda meeting, Commissioner Moran had kind of warned that he expected like a very large crowd at last night's meeting, and he was questioning why they were doing it in the city council room. And it was kind of like a weird conversation because I think no one else really was in that mindset of, oh, the first meeting in June is going to be like packed. And then finally, Commissioner Moran was like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one reading the news lately. And then he referenced people being arrested for not filling out permits for holding protests, which is actually people getting issued a summons for not filling out a protest permit. And so I guess he was anticipating Saratoga BLM showing up on force. Last night, they were not there. There was kind of the usuals that we see every week, but they were not there, which I thought was interesting. And then there were a couple public comments that were very supportive of Mayor Safford, thanking him for his military service. We've just gone through Memorial Day. Also, a couple people talking about the homeless issue. One who I believe her name is Hannah Hurley. I could be making that up, but I think her name is Hannah Hurley. She was on the homelessness task force that happened last year. She comes to almost every meeting. She's very unhappy with where the city is in terms of movement on a permanent homeless shelter. But it was interesting because her opinion was offset by a few other voices that were really appreciative of everything that the city is doing to make various solutions for people who are unhoused happen. So I thought that was kind of a positive, that people are kind of seeing that the city is really firing on all cylinders to try to help people who are unhoused at every degree, at every kind of level. One of the things that came up in that conversation after public comment, Commissioner Cole responded to this. One of the public commenters has been saying for the last one or two meetings that the SSPD has specifically been arresting homeless and unhoused individuals for no reason and like locking them up and throwing away the key so that we don't have to see them during the Belmont experience, which is a pretty horrific accusation to make. And certainly,
and one easy to prove or disprove.
Well, I was kind of shocked because everything the police department has been doing and public safety has been doing has been kind of contrary to that spirit. They created community engagement officers who specifically go out and form relationships with the homeless. We have a homeless court to divert the homeless out of prison. And we've been working with RISE. We've been working with Shelters of Saratoga. We've been taking all these efforts to make it a positive experience and really get people back on track. And so I was like, wait, what? Like, I just can't imagine the SSPD rounding people up for no reason because they want to get them out of sight, out of mind. So Commissioner Cole spoke to that issue after public comment and clarified that he spoke to the police chief. He was informed about any arrests that have happened with people who have been unhoused. And I think there were like 2 circumstances in which there were arrests, but they were warranted. And he gave the specific reasons as to why in the moment. And it had obviously nothing to do with keeping them out of sight, out of mind. So I thought it was great that he corrected the record, but I was really kind of shocked at how much media pickup that rumor essentially got. It was I think the NYCLU put out a statement about it. There was definitely coverage, and I think the Gazette, and, based off of nothing really, but someone coming in a public comment and saying this was something they had heard. So I thought it was a damaging rumor, but one that was really important to clear up.
And I'm glad Commissioner Cole was quick on that. Back to what Dylan Moran was saying, in fairness to him, I kind of shared his concern that this city council meeting would be an opportunity for some to agitate, because we're kind of, it's a big week, right? If you want to make a big splash, you do it during a big week. So I had some concerns on that as well, and apparently, obviously in the end they were for naught. But if he was just doing that based on his concern without facts, well, I was sort of there as well. He might have had more. He might have known something inside, because he talks to a lot of people. I didn't. I just, mine was just gut.
It sounded like he maybe knew a little bit more than other people knew. Who knows? I would say that certainly I kind of share your concern that this is a very high visibility week for the city. But if I were wanting to disrupt things, I think that probably there's going to be bigger venues than the city council meeting this week to do that. And I hope it doesn't happen. I really hope it doesn't happen. But we do know that at the last rally that Saratoga BLM was a co-sponsor of on May 25th, one of the things that Lex, who is the leader, was saying was that he plans on disrupting city business, both, governmentally and with like the small businesses downtown, and being disruptive during track season in particular, which was not great to hear.
He said such a thing?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I missed that. That's significant. And not to change the subject, I just want to loop this in. We talk about protests. We always think the people that are usually at city hall meetings, but there's also the horse racing wrongs, PETA type element with the races going on. And maybe you were implying that, maybe you knew that as you were saying that, Rob, and that's something I'm concerned about as well. Out in California a couple of years ago, they handcuffed themselves together and laid on the track at Golden Gate Fields. So there could, God, I hope not, but that's not out of the realm of possibilities of just some sort of general animal rights protest in front of the track. They're always in front of the track on a big day, but do they do something that's a more significant disruption? I hope not.
Well, I will say we have a lot of experience with protests, and if people were sitting down on the track, that's almost like mild, I feel like, in comparison to some of the things we've gone through. But I would hope it wouldn't happen either, certainly. And I hope that the week goes off without a hitch. A lot of praise was given to Commissioner Cole for how much he is prepared for this week, working with different agencies. And Commissioner Moran actually was one of the people paying the compliment to Commissioner Cole, saying, he was like, I don't think anyone else in this position who didn't have your background would have been able to coordinate this as well as you've coordinated it with the FBI, with the New York State Police, with the Sheriff's Department, and really working with all these agencies to make sure everything is as safe as possible for residents and tourists alike this week. So that was always nice to hear. I always like it when they compliment each other. And
that's a significant compliment. That's a significant compliment.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that Commissioner Cole, that's one of the, his strongest things that he brings to the table is his wealth of experience dealing with all these different agencies and the relationships he has with them to do things like this,
Yeah. And his deputy commissioner, Dan Charlson, who, full disclosure, he's a friend of mine, but he was just recently retired at the end of last year as a captain in the New York State Police. So Commissioner Cole brings tremendous experience, as does Dan Charlson.
Yeah, I don't know Dan as well, but my interactions with him have always been very positive. So public comments, nothing really, wild happened. 2 women were asked to leave at one point, which was interesting. Mayor Safford was like, if you can't stop talking, I'm going to need you to leave. And then he was finally like, you both need to leave. And they left. And he was like, thank you for leaving. So
were they talking to each other loudly, or were they at the microphone being obnoxious or something?
I think, it was kind of hard to hear from home. I think they were commenting on what was being discussed at the table, and they weren't at the microphone. And so they were just kind of creating a disruption in the audience section. But they continued to be noisy and people couldn't be heard. And so, he did the right thing and they left without incident. So that was good.
So misbehaving like in second grade.
Yeah, pretty much. Except in this case, you could just go sit outside and watch the meeting and, continue to chat. So let's see. Going through the agendas, nothing super significant until this kind of one issue started to be brought up that then became like a freaking massive fight towards the end of the council meeting. And it's not a sexy issue per se, but it really did cause like 40 minutes almost by my kind of estimation of like yelling and ugliness at the council table in a way that we really haven't seen with this council in particular. So it started with Commissioner Songvi had put in for some upgrades for people in her department, upgrade their civil service level and their compensation. And she had, I don't know, a handful of people who had their upgrades approved by civil service and by HR and so forth. And so she wanted to have it voted on and passed at last night's meeting. Typically, these would be things that would be done during the budget season, but also doing this outside of the contractual negotiations that are about to happen with the mayor and the labor unions. According to the labor attorney that the city employs, constitutes an illegal practice. Brian Kremer, who's the labor attorney, has come out with this letter informing the city council that he believes doing these upgrades outside of that time period is basically participating in an illegal process. And so,
because like you implied, sorry, Robin, it should be done through the collective bargaining process.
Correct.
Anywhere else, it would be okay, but Saratoga, being Saratoga, has a bunch of quirks that under the city charter makes this something that the mayor's office should be negotiating, not the way it's been done.
No, not at all. And during budget season as well, which we are not in. And so that kicked off this kind of debate about, at first, there was a little bit of defensiveness on the part of Commissioner Moran and Commissioner Songvi about the urgency to compensate our employees fairly and adjust their job descriptions, some of which haven't been touched in like 20 years, and to make sure we're compensating people for the work that they're doing in a way that, keeps them at City Hall, which I agree is super duper important. But Tim Cole, his point was, I'm not going to vote for something that our attorney is telling us is illegal. Like he was like just very black and white about it. Like I'm not going to vote for it. If our attorney says it's illegal, we need to come up with a process that works, that is legal, and then I'm all about it. And the mayor kind of weighed in with the same perspective. And Commissioner Moran and Commissioner Songvi, as well as Commissioner Golub, they really all have issues with Brian Kremer's legal opinion. They don't put much stock in it. They basically are like, we disagree with his opinion and we think we should move forward.
I got to interrupt you. And I'm going to criticize them here. They don't put much stock in it because he disagrees with the position they want to be in to quickly do what they want to do. And they have good reasons for wanting to do what they want to do, but do it the proper way. And we're using city money at $250, $300 an hour to have Mr. Kramer, who is a respected labor attorney, as you know, that was my field, public sector labor, to research this and lead the way, or show the way anyway, show the proper way to do this. And the majority on the city council is saying, nah, we don't want to do it that way. Is what I'm saying.
I'm going to be devil's advocate for a minute here. I agree with you to an extent, except for the fact that this issue came up a couple months ago. And to date, Brian Kramer has not said, okay, here's how we can solve this and put this new process in place. This is what I would propose.
I agree with that, but it doesn't make his original advice and counsel incorrect.
True. And I also think, like, if half of the city council isn't going to put any stock in a legal opinion that we're paying for, they should probably get a different labor attorney.
Exactly. Exactly. But it smacks of lack of convenience that he is making it harder for them to do what they want to do. And they have legitimate reasons for, at least, me being a labor guy, I want to believe they have legitimate reasons for wanting to do upgrades. But because of the quirks, and there's a lot of it, and I won't get into the weeds here, other cities could do it without outside. In fact, essentially state law would allow them, it'd be a management right for them to establish salary grades and so forth. But because Saratoga made some, I'm guessing, mistakes probably decades ago, and the way state law is going to interact with our city charter, that needs to be done through the collective bargaining process, and it's not being done through the collective bargaining process.
Well, and it was interesting because Commissioner Moran was making an argument that, like, this kind of minutia, like adjusting, job descriptions and getting kind of this nitty gritty, wouldn't happen during a collective bargaining agreement discussion, that it would never get that granular. And, I don't know that that's the case or not, but, everything Commissioner Songview was asking for her employees, I thought was totally warranted. It again just came down to this kind of procedural issue. So anyhow,
it can be done outside the grand negotiations. You can negotiate anything at any time, but to your point, there are more efficient ways to do that, and the best way to do it will be all at once for a new collective bargaining agreement. But there's no requirement that it be done all at once. It's just, it's probably advisable if you can get it done at the same time. But they can get granular, and by law they have to be, if they want to move forward on that. They can't just blow off the law because it's kind of hard and takes a little bit of time and so forth. You got to do it the right way.
Well, and by all accounts, they had done it the right way in the sense that they went to HR, they went to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission signed off on the upgrades and changes, and so almost all the boxes that you have to check were checked. So it's not like they're skipping those steps. But anyhow, they voted on these upgrades and they passed 3-2. So Commissioner Cole and Mayor Stafford voted no. The other 3 commissioners voted yes. Okay, fast forward to the public safety agenda. On the public safety agenda, and this was something that they had gone over the day before during pre-agenda, no one had said anything about it. Commissioner Cole had an item on his agenda that he wanted to create a new purchasing position for the public safety department. And he explained that they had 3 purchasing agents in DPS. One left a few months ago. One's about to leave next week to go work for a dental office. And he's concerned that the last person they have is going to actually apply for the DPW purchasing agent job that just came up. And even being 2 out of 3 down is seriously problematic for DPS in terms of how much those folks do. But looking at the possibility of having nobody it's a critical issue. And so he had created this new job position. A civil service test was put out. People took the test. The person who scored the highest on the test is currently one of the remaining purchasing agent in DPS. So he wanted the city council to approve this new position. But basically, Commissioner Moran, Commissioner Songvie, and Commissioner Golub started flipping out because they were like, wait a minute, this is exactly what Commissioner Songvie just tried to do that you had this big problem with in terms of procedure. And now you're asking us to do the same exact thing for you. Could you be any more hypocritical?
Yeah, the tone was essentially, oh,
they freaked. And it was like, to me, it was kind of like an obvious difference in that it was a new position being created in a very time sensitive situation versus civil service upgrades that could technically happen at any point during the year and aren't, there was no critical need for those folks to have them like in this moment. To me, that was the obvious differentiator. But I swear to God, Dan, for like 40 minutes, they went off the rails about this.
Yeah, I only caught part of this, but I did catch part of it.
It got gnarly. I mean, screaming, calling Commissioner Cole hypocritical, kind of grilling him on, did you talk to Brian Kremer about this to confirm that this is legal? And his response to that was, well, I spoke to HR who spoke to Brian Kremer. And they were like, so you didn't speak to him directly? Like, and like just everything was making them flip out. And it just kept going on and on and on and on, like to the point where I was like, I actually sent Commissioner Golub a text and I was like, holy hell, make this end. Because I felt like I was listening to like teenagers just rehash the same argument over and over. And every time they did it again, it just got, the level of rhetoric just got nastier. And like at one point, Commissioner Moran was screaming at the mayor saying like, why are you turning this into this big partisan issue? Why are you behaving like a partisan hack and trying to make us look like the other three of us look like we're like these far left progressive liberals? And I was like, what? And Mayor Safford was like, what? And then they really demanded to know why Mayor Safford was going to vote yes to this, even though he had voted no to Commissioner Songby's upgrades. And he didn't have a very clear answer. He didn't really have his rationale thought out in the moment super well. So that didn't help matters. And so it was a shit show. It was a total shit show, and it was demoralizing. And I was sad that it got to that point. And it was just a bummer that they couldn't have, I don't know, tabled it. They always
that is the easiest way to have handled that at some point would say, okay, timeout. Like you said, let's table this. We will go back to our labor council, say, hey, we brought you an issue 3 months ago and you gave us counsel on that. We have a similar but slightly different issue, and here's the distinction of the previous issue. Can you advise us? Is the way we want to do it legal or not? And we'll wait for your answer. I hope that's happening. I hope that's happening. Otherwise, you get but one side is going to lose, and they're going to just discount the Mr. Kremer saying, well, his answer is not valid. He's the city's labor attorney that we're paying good money for, like you said earlier. Then why are we discounting his answer? Why are we're spending taxpayer dollars at $300 an hour?
Why are we using him if they're not going to accept his legal opinions? Like they should, honestly, what's the point? And the other thing that was kind of distressing was that I had also watched the pre-agenda meeting on Monday, and Commissioner Cole went over this agenda item and no one had anything to say about it in the moment on Monday. But then Tuesday it became, like,
do you think this was orchestrated, or do you think it was organic?
I don't, it felt organic, although it did seem like Mayor Safford and Commissioner Cole had probably had a conversation about it. In the same way, though, that, Commissioner Golub and Commissioner Moran have conversations about their agenda items. I don't think it was like nefarious at all.
The attacks, I guess the attacks, that was organic.
The attacks seemed like they were just kind of like building off of each other's energy and just, like it snowballed. Okay. But the one point they did make about Mayor Safford that I thought was fair was that they all agreed this was an issue with the process, but it's incumbent on the mayor to bring something before the council to fix that process. And he has not done such. And so they were like, yeah, we're waiting on you. You got to bring us something and we're happy to vote on it and solve and clear this up so we don't have these issues moving forward, but you haven't brought us anything. And so I thought that was a fair point. And I know it's only been, a couple months, but it's been 6 months probably that Mayor Safford's been in office. This is only a 2-year term. This issue did come up a couple months ago. And so I know he's got a million things going on and it's those jobs, you're so busy, but this seems like something that probably they should have been working on with Brian Kremer. So they could have had something to the council before this and kind of avoided this whole situation.
Yeah, I'm confused. You mean have Brian Kremer address this new issue that Commissioner Cole brought up last night with creating the new position Is this
No,
legal?
just address the issue of doing upgrades outside of the uh, uh,
Right.
union
The
negotiation.
collective bargaining process, but it seems like that issue was answered by Mr. Kremer, at least that it's illegal. I see what you're saying. Okay, Mr. Kremer, fine. What's the way out? Right?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying? How do we
yeah.
get out of
Because
this
for
this pit?
example, like you can't tell me it's illegal if you have 2 or 3 people who are doing the same job and they all quit, they all leave. It can't be illegal to bring a new person in or promote someone in that department to fill that hole, whenever it happens during the year. There's no way that's illegal. There's got to be obviously a way to work around the legal issue that Brian is seeing to resolve this so we can actually have like a functioning city government and be able to fill positions if there's an issue.
It does seem like further questions should have been issued to Mr. Kremer to clarify the issue further and bring it on home. And it's too late. It's too late for last night's meeting to do that, but it's not too late for the issue, right? And they should, all 5 of them should agree. What are we asking Kremer? Well, here's. I mean, maybe technically they don't have to. Maybe the mayor can just issue it. I don't know, but to have some cooperation amongst the 5 of them, they should say, okay, let's find out where we stand. And the city has in-house city council that aren't necessarily labor, as you mentioned, but they know something about it, so they can guide them there. And so this should be solvable. This should not be a mess.
I totally agree. And I also was just like, if these issues were going to come up, why wasn't Brian Kremer there to address it with the council last night? I mean, Tony Izzo's always there. I think Mr. Harper is usually there, but no attorney came to the lectern to discuss any of this. It was just all fighting amongst the council. The one other thing that I was going to point out, though, is that at one point they referenced Commissioner Madigan, and they were like, I wish Commissioner Madigan was still here to tell us if these upgrades were something that happened commonly or routinely during her tenure. And I know the answer to that. And the answer is no, that these were doing an upgrade outside of the budget season, outside of contractual negotiations, were something that was really strongly avoided. At all. I mean, it was really very rare that it happened, and it wasn't something that finance liked to do. They like to do it during the budget season when all this negotiations are happening, not outside of the budget season, unless there was a seriously compelling or time-sensitive reason to be doing so. So I wish Commissioner Madigan had been there to give that context to them, because I think it would have helped a little bit, because I think this council and the last council has been using these upgrades during the year more and more and more often. And I don't think that's the right way to be handling it.
I can't tell you how many times as a labor leader, we approached the state of New York and said, hey, we've got this issue. It's really unfair. It's killing recruitment. It's killing retention. They would say, okay, about a year from now, we're going to initiate contract negotiations with you. Make sure you bring it up then. I mean, it got obnoxious because we knew what the end. Ultimately, we were quick studies. We realized what their answer was going to be. Now, there are, like I was pointing out earlier, there are times when you can have negotiations on a single issue. The state or the government, the management has an obligation to negotiate certain things, so that it happens all the time. They negotiate one thing, 2 things, 3 things, not just the overall collective bargaining agreement. Like I said, sometimes it makes sense to be efficient about it, but the state, if it's 4 years out, 3 years out, you need to address it now, right? You shouldn't, even though but I don't know the cycle of city negotiations right now, but yeah, the urgency or the perceived urgency, you can always give that person back pay, because it takes a while. Let's say it doesn't go until a year from now, you can make it retroactive, that upgrade to whatever date you pick. Yeah, granted, the person doesn't get the money today, but they are ultimately made whole.
True, but I don't know how you would operate DPS down 2 out of the 3 purchasing agents, because they do so much more than that. Like, they're the ones who handle everything.
What Commissioner Cole is saying is apparently something new, a new title, I think, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. At a certain grade.
Yes.
And he's saying that is the distinction between what they were doing, current titles upgraded. Versus, I believe, creating a brand. And I could be wrong here. I only saw 15 minutes of last night's meeting. Everything I'm saying here is qualified on my impressions, but it does seem like what Commissioner Cole was proposing to do was much different than what council warned against, that it was being illegal, or maybe not much different, but different enough.
No, you're right. And when he said that, they were like, yeah, but you have the person in mind already who you want to put in that position. So you're just creating it for them. And he was like, no, there was a civil service test, and this person was the number one high scorer on the civil service test. So yes, obviously we want the person who's the most qualified to be in the position. And this is the person who's number one in terms of the test results. So he was like, it was certainly open and competitive. It just so happened that the person who scored the highest is the person who, is the remaining purchasing agent who, he would like to see in that position. So anyhow, it went around and around. To their credit, they ended up voting on Commissioner Cole's request and passed it 5-0. So they were able to kind of put all the ugliness aside for a hot minute and vote on it. But, Commissioner Songvi multiple times expressed her deep disappointment in Mayor Safford. It was not good, guys. It was not good.
On such an inside baseball kind of issue.
I know. We have a comment from Jeremy Messina for Assembly. I think Mayor Safford is doing a good job. I will say, if this had been Ron Kim, it would have gone like nuclear. Like the friggin' building would have blown up. So yeah, I think he handled it as well as he could handle it. One of the other quick things that I wanted to mention that is a change for city council meetings are these new safety procedures they put in place for people who are going to city council meetings, which is that you will go through a metal detector or be wanded on your way in, which is such a basic safety measure and something that actually our council put in place, but then Ron Kim got rid of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so necessary. The fact that you can just walk into a governmental building, walk into a public meeting like this, and there's literally zero security. You could walk in with whatever the freak you want, is crazy and doesn't happen in any other municipality,
The Daily Gazette, which has taken the city to task, as well as Commissioner Cole and Mayor Safford on other issues, wrote an editorial. I don't know if you caught it 2 weeks ago, or we can have yeah, duh. That was the essence of their editorial. Good move. We get it.
Exactly. And by the way, if you go into City Hall and you go to the second floor where the courts are, you go through a metal detector. So it's so the only, there was one person in public comment, Kristen Dart, who was upset about these new steps being put in place, because she made mention that when she's on the first floor of City Hall, walking to the meeting room, all the offices are locked. And God forbid there was someone shooting, there would be no place to basically go. You'd be like a sitting duck in the hall. But I kind of was I was kind of confused by that, only in that, I don't know, so the commissioners and the mayor should leave their offices wide open when the public's coming in and out of the building for a city council meeting. I'm not sure that's the solution either.
I get what she's saying. I get to your point. And a quick point, Commissioner Cole brought that forward because there was a written recommendation from the insurance company, I believe, right? The city's insurance, and we've been dumped by insurers before. So when the insurance company talks, the city at least has to listen with an understanding ear. Not maybe ultimately sometimes you got to tell the insurance company no, but we do that too many times, and we saw what happens. In this case, it was a dysfunction that the insurance company bailed, and we got a new insurance company at a much higher price.
I will say there were very few times I felt unsafe at city council meetings. I did have to wear a bulletproof vest a handful of times, which is the most unflattering thing ever. And I was like, screw this. I'd rather be unsafe. But the only times I think I've noticed that have made me uncomfortable, people have kind of crossed the line from where the public is supposed to be, into where the commissioners and mayors are sitting, have physically kind of broken that barrier. And that starts making me very, very nervous.
In the meeting room or upstairs?
Both.
Okay.
In the council room on the first floor, I think the only time I ever noticed Officer Barrett kind of look at me like we might have an issue was when someone kind of broke that barrier and came up onto kind of the floor where we were all sitting, and suddenly was like, 12 inches away from me. And so, that makes me uncomfortable. And I'm glad they're doing this in general. I think it's for everyone's benefit, and it is long, long, long overdue.
Yeah, which officer barrel was that? Because I'm pretty sure there's 4 of them that all look exactly alike.
Officer Glenn Barrett, the best multitasker in that department ever. Our SRO, our mounted police officer, he's just
City Hall, yeah.
deals with
track.
all the city hall meetings. I mean, he's a freaking saint. I love that man. He's terrific. Another interesting thing to note: Fire Station 3 is open.
Oh, I know that well, Robin. I know that well. They were at my house last week. I had a medical scare, took an ambulance ride, and they were there. The fire truck out of Fire Station 3 got there much more quickly than, because I've had them there in the past for my kids, and I didn't time it because I had a medical issue. Fortunately, all problems negative. I'm sorry?
You didn't set your stopwatch the second you started feeling
well, one time I had like something that was just on the cusp of it. It was like I think it was a strange, maybe a gas leak or something. So I was able to be outside. I said, well, let me see how long this takes. So I did time them once. But I do have a clean bill of health, incidentally. But I was a beneficiary of the new Fire Station 3 being closer to the Eastern Plateau. So accommodations to not just the current city council, but the past, going back to you and probably before you, right? This was not this was not put together in 6 months.
awesome.
So it's several years. So I, as a citizen, I appreciate, we complain a lot on this podcast about certain things. This is a great city to live in.
Well, I am very glad to hear that you're okay. But also, I will just take personal credit, and I'm very happy that I was able to get an ambulance there in a timely manner.
Thank you.
No, I will always give our council a lot of credit, because Mayor Kelly secured the land, and Commissioner Madigan secured the bond and financing, and we broke ground, and then handed it over to the next council. So it's so gratifying to see it open. And I drove by the other day and I saw the ambulance and the fire truck there. I am anticipating there being a financial problemo as this continues, because they still don't seem to have resolved how we're funding this in a way that makes me feel comfortable. But hey, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. For right now, we've got 3 fire departments functioning. Rock on.
Yeah. What I'll say, and this is going to sound cavalier of me, because obviously I want my city government to be efficient and cut costs and so forth. But ultimately, if this grant money runs out and there's nowhere to go, hey, that's the cost of doing business. And if you got to raise my taxes to have proper fire coverage and EMS coverage in the city, I want you to cut elsewhere as much as you can, and so forth. I want you to be efficient, but I'm not terrified of that.
I know what you mean. And to me, I would rather see some revenues directed towards this than towards the places they're currently going.
Well, that's what I mean. They have to be efficient.
It's like a multi-million-dollar budget gap, like many millions. So it would be a significant amount of money. And with all the projects that the city is trying to accomplish, I think it would be a serious financial problem if that were to happen. So hopefully, I know Commissioner Songby has been planning for this. And so hopefully with the revenue that starts coming in from paid parking, although I feel like that's been promised to like everyone and their mother, maybe the marijuana revenue, once we get these places open, which is supposed to go to public safety, could help offset some of those costs, or we could get the grant extended. Who knows? Either way, I'm just happy it's open.
Absolutely. Good point. Thanks for bringing that one up.
Speaking of which, I just wanted to mention paid parking. The paid parking program goes into effect next week after the Belmont in terms of enforcement. So if you're a resident and you haven't registered your car with the city yet, go to the webpage, go to DPW's Facebook page. It's super easy. It took me like 2 seconds. You basically just have to put in your license plate number and like a description of your car. Boom, boom, boom. Done. It's registered. You don't have to do anything else, because your permit is your license plate serves as your permit. They'll scan your license plate to see that you have a permit. The The only thing that is like a little bit of a hiccup for me and maybe some other people, I've got 2 cars. I registered one. I didn't register the other one yet because you have to have no more than 2 unpaid parking tickets to be able to get the permit.
Well,
And I may or may not have a few more than that on this one car. So I'm like, waiting. I'm just going to wait until the very last minute.
just turn the plates in and put the car in your husband's name and voila.
Done. I'm going to get a vanity plate.
Yeah.
And yeah, good call. If you're a business owner, however, the DBA and the Chamber of Commerce is apparently sending out instructions on how to get your parking permit. If you are not a member of the DBA or the Chamber, I would recommend calling the Department of Public Works so you can get your business and your employees their permits, because this is coming up in about 5 minutes, and I don't want people to be getting ticketed for no reason. So,
and a reminder: this does not affect any street parking. Correct? This is just the flat lots and the garages.
Okay, I kind of have a problem with this statement because I live on Caroline Street between Henry and Circular, so right downtown, and I am sure as shit that it is going to affect my ability to park on this street when this goes into effect. So while it doesn't directly affect street parking, this spillover effect, I think, is going to be real for people who
valid. But my point is, you can park on the street whether you're registered or not.
Check. And there's on Broadway as well.
Yeah, and any of the streets. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes, correct. There was, I think you had mentioned there was something that came up about Saratoga and their desire to have monies that were set aside some years ago spent and get more bike lanes going. And I just wanted to make like one tiny comment on that, if you're up for it.
Go for it.
So a couple years ago, they did a pilot project on Henry Street where they took Henry Street and they turned it into a one-way street and then put in a big bike path on the other side of the street. For me, for where I live, for this little neighborhood, it was, excuse my language, a fucking nightmare. Like a fucking nightmare. Because the way the streets work in this little downtown, all of our one-way streets that head west to east, they're all one way, and you can't turn right or left then on Henry Street to get to where you're going if Henry Street's one way. And so basically, like, to get to my house, I would have to go to Spring Street, to Circular, Down Lake, Hodgman. Like, I'd have to do this big cut around because I couldn't ever turn the way I needed to turn on Henry. It was whatever. I thought it was kind of a shit show. There were so many little fender benders because people turned onto Henry Street and then like didn't know what to do. They just like froze in their car, which is kind of what I did the first time. I was like, wait, what's happening? Like, did one lane get smaller? Like, it was confusing. But they promised that they were going to release the results of a survey that they did with all the residents after this like 2-week pilot program finished. And those results were never released. And to me, that says people weren't happy with it. And so I totally get what Saratoga is saying. When there's money put aside for bike trails and bike lanes and it doesn't get spent, that seems ridiculous. And there's obviously a huge group of people here who want to see more bike lanes. And so like spend the money. But in this particular instance, I would just like to call for those survey results to actually be published, because something tells me that this is maybe not the best spot to kind of prioritize in terms of spending.
If you give me the specifics offline, maybe we can do a FOIL request, because that's certainly a FOILable document. Yeah. And to your point, I'm a fan of Saratoga generally, and they've got a lot of issues. You know, the issue's deep, but money has already been spent in this city, and we should bring Saratoga on in the next week or two, or somebody that's Complete Streets or something to talk about this issue. Because it's important. I know there's 2 sides of the bike issue and lanes and Union Avenue and all this, but I'm looking at the network of bike lanes and trails and so forth in the city, and I'm kind of marveling at it, and I'm excited at where it's going. Like, wow, this all came together. And some people say, well, I never see bikes there, and I get that, maybe because it's not complete yet. But this is a great city for a lot of reasons, and I don't live in the downtown core anymore, but I used to, and even then, the few bike lanes we had then, I used them quite a bit.
That downtown connector trail is really nice. I've never used it. I'm not a big biker, but the way it's designed, there's just really ample space for people walking and biking. And all the folks who live kind of down by the Fresh Market Plaza now have a way to walk or bike downtown, which they didn't have before. I'm like super impressed with that downtown connector trail.
And this is the Excelsior High Rock stretch you're talking about, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
That did look well done.
Yeah.
Looked safe, pleasant, almost picturesque. Not that it was picturesque, but you're a visitor to the city and you see such a well-designed, functional bike trail right next to the street there. I thought that was, that made me feel good.
I totally agree. The thing I think that gives bike lanes a bad name are when they do them like how Peter Martin did them on Lake Avenue, which are like the shittiest, most dangerous bike lanes I've ever seen in my life. And I don't see anyone use them. And I'm on Lake Avenue constantly every day. And the reason I think people don't use them is because they're so goddamn dangerous. People don't even know they're a bike lane. It's like that was so poorly done and didn't do Biketoga's mission any help, you know?
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar. I mean, I'm familiar with the lanes. I didn't know that the history that you're telling me about here.
It's literally just one tiny skinny white line that's, gets faded, and you can't tell it's a bike lane. And, someone stops to turn left, people swing around. I mean, I would never let my kids bike on Lake Avenue.
Yeah, as far as the more well-traveled highways in Saratoga, if I was riding my bike much, and I haven't been much lately, but I would do it as my friend describes riding his motorcycle. Ride like everybody's out to get you. Yeah. It's dangerous.
Yeah. Oof, motorcycles. Whole other thing. Anyway, switching subjects, there's been a couple business updates, one of which I really wanted to shout out. Steve Mittler opened Mittler's over the weekend, which is on Fiveless Street where Tailgate and Party used to be, which previously had been the Four Seasons. And he described it when he was first kind of starting it and conceptualizing it. He described it to me as part bodega and then part kind of a casual restaurant where you can get some like heavy, yummy snacks. And as a New York City girl, I freaked out because there's nothing I love more than a freaking bodega. And it is the one thing that this city is missing in every neighborhood, in my opinion. And our zoning should be changed so we should have them, everywhere. Because walking to the corner store to be able to pick up, milk, whatever, is just the best. And it creates community within community. And so I'm so excited that Mittler's is open. My kids went yesterday and called me and they were like, this place is amazing. And so I got like a rave review from the Dalton children. And I'm just super excited to see it open and just want to offer Steve a huge congratulations.
And his energy and excitement is contagious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, what he brings to that project, he loves it. At this point, it's just his love of what he wants to do and his vision and so forth, what you said. And I think that's really great. I hope he knocks it out of the park. I have not gotten there since he's opened. I have been through there a few times while he was constructing. It took longer than he hoped, but don't all these projects, I guess, to Steve. So folks, check it out there, right across from Bailey's. Go ahead,
I know it sounds like a weird thing, but I would always say to people, if it's like 8:00 at night, again, I live on Caroline between Henry and Circular. Say I want a Diet Coke and I want to go walk and get a Diet Coke. Yeah. There's no place to go. Like I'd have to walk up to the Storts across from the city center. Like there's just no, again, bodegas. There used to be like a vending machine that was like chained to the building at the bottom of my street, which was like I don't know where it came from. I don't know whose freaking vending machine it was. It was there for a couple of years. I freaking loved it, but then one day it disappeared. But anyway, I just think this is an awesome addition to the neighborhood. So yay, Steve, and thank you.
What else you got for business?
Well, we were hoping to have Sarah Berger on, who is the attorney for Gaffney's. And we weren't able to connect to make that happen today, but I'm hoping to have her on next week because I'd really like to get an update about what's going on at Gaffney's, because as we've read in the paper, the former owner, John Baker, who's holding the note for the current owners of Gaffney's, is made a motion to start foreclosure proceedings. He said, I think he had not been paid something like March, April, and May rent. And there was also something around $260,000 $100,000 in unpaid property taxes as well. And so he was starting the process of wanting to foreclose. I think that Gaffney's has been in kind of like a no-win situation for a long time. I don't know how you can operate a property that's that size and that type of venue without being able to play music, which is one of the restrictions that was put on them by the SLA. Almost, I want to say almost 2 years ago now, because it wasn't it during Jim Montanino's tenure.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, certainly during his, yeah. At least a year and a half.
Yeah, so
That's
like
within music, right? That's the limit of what they can do.
All they can do is
essentially music.
Literally, like if you're in a store, like a clothing store, and you hear that kind of like quiet music, that's the only type of music they can have. And that don't work. I was there, the last time I was there was during Chowder Fest. It was jammed. And I remember texting the owner being like, Justin, we need music. And he was like, yeah, we can't do it. So I don't know how you get a crowd and get people there when you can't play any music. It's just that it's that kind of venue. So I don't want to see any businesses foreclose or fail, but obviously, for John Baker and I think he's holding like at least a $2.5 million loan for them. He can't be out of that money as well. And so there's a lot of nuance to it, but I would love to get an update from Sarah, who is Gaffney's attorney, if she is able to come on. I think that was, we have a sushi place going into Fish at 30 Lake.
Yep. Well, the same owners as Azumi, I think, down in Malta, that has a pretty good following, from what I understand.
I always think it's a good sign when a sushi place, for example, has like multiple locations in the capital region. I always think that, it's a good sign.
That will create a concentration of Asian restaurants, or enhance the already concentration of Asian restaurants in that area. Fusion in the place next door. Then you got the place behind Gaffney's, the sushi place there, and now the one at 30 Lake. That's 4 Asian restaurants in about 2 blocks.
So I will say Philo Fusion and Sushi Thai are owned by the same person.
Right, but they are separate restaurants.
True.
The separate dining rooms and so forth. Maybe they share a kitchen. I don't know. Hey, I want to mention here, Belmont Week, busiest time arguably in Saratoga's history, perhaps. I guess that's still being written. But, Gaffney's is limping along. The district is closed. Nashville is closed. Sperry's has been closed.
The empty lot is still sitting there.
What's that?
That empty lot is still sitting there next to Sperry's.
Yeah. Dango's is gutted.
I know.
Kevin Decker, not formerly, of Ciro's, and some other people are gutting it and turning it into, I believe it's going to be a really nice restaurant. I think it's going to be called the Wild Horse. Good for Kevin Decker. He gave me a walkthrough of it a couple of weeks ago. It's down to the studs, or at least it was. And he was hoping to open this week. I don't know if he did.
They put $1 million into Dango's, which I was very excited about as a neighbor, basically, of Dango's, because it was a little lowbrow. I don't know if it's going to be like a fine dining restaurant, but the kitchen, I know, in Dango's previously was basically the size of a closet. So all you could do was basically like fry some mozzarella sticks and call it a day. So I think everything they're doing sounds great, but it does concern me that we're going into our busy season, and people who expect us to have these kind of stapled nightlife venues open and happening, I mean, they're going to come here and they're not going to be there. And I don't think that's a good look.
Yeah, and it just sort of shocks me to have all these are prime locations in the busiest 10 weeks of anybody upstate, right? Anywhere upstate would kill to have a fraction of our business. And these locations, Savory Pantry on Broadway, different thing, but it's a Broadway business that is empty. And I'm not like, it's just a shame. It's like, it's a shame that things fell. And obviously Sperry's is for a certain reason. Dango's is for a good reason. It's just not there yet. The district in Nashville, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, pay your freaking taxes, district in Nashville. But wait, why do you think Sperry's hasn't sold?
No, it didn't. The owner of Nove, he's in the process of purchasing it.
Yeah,
but it's just not, he only did this a month or two ago. So it's going to be a process, and he owns the lot next door, the empty lot. I think you just referenced that, and he has ideas for that, but it's just, so that's not a problem, so to speak. It's just a shame to see such prime real estate, something as iconic as Sperry's, continue to be empty now for the second summer in a row. And again, some of these locations are on the upswing. Some of them are not. So it's just a shame.
Well, hopefully Walt Whitman will have a great summer.
Yeah.
Some of our other businesses hopefully will have a
Yes,
great
yeah,
summer.
we are focusing on negative. We got some stellar
Yeah.
restaurants. To your point, Wild Horse is going to be a little bit like, according to Kevin, a Seneca is in that similar
Yum.
realm, I would think.
God, I
Is
love Seneca.
we got great restaurants in this town, and I don't get to them enough. I got young kids, and there's only 3 restaurants that they want to go to.
Wait, it's so nice of you that you take your kids to the restaurants. I never take them. If I'm going to go out to eat, leaving those guys at home.
My daughters love pasta, so Wheatfields is one of their number one choices, as is Forno Bistro.
Well, I just have it always drilled into my brain from my father-in-law, Joe Dalton, that an empty storefront in downtown Saratoga is the absolute last thing you ever want to see, because the city did so much work, as we know, in the 60s and 70s and 80s to build up the downtown that we have now, which previously had been decimated and, empty storefronts everywhere. So, so hopefully these things, turn around quickly and have positive outcomes. But I wish it had been sooner rather than later, so we could have had a little more open before we went into summer.
Yeah. You hate to see these places close 2 months before Belmont and track season, and that's what's happened with a lot of them because of things either by choice or it's been lingering for 2 years, like Sperry's, and then 30 Lake closed February, March. So it's just, and then Savory Pantry on Broadway, they closed just not too long ago. I was surprised they couldn't make it through the summer, and then you close in October, right, or January. I'm
surprised that hasn't been leased yet.
Well, oftentimes it's a price thing, right? I'm sure there are people that want to go in there until they see the price.
I actually leased it to the Savory Pantry back in the day. Meanwhile, I think I might have said this last time I was on, but I went to the Bunker with my kids. That place is freaking
we didn't
great.
mention the Bunker.
Yeah, it's freaking great.
It is. I was there as well. It's fun. It's so Saratoga, right? It's so Saratoga of this age. Of not 30 years ago, but of today, it's a perfect business, folks. It's basically a bar restaurant, at bar food level with several golf simulators in it. A golf simulator, think about a room about the size of a bedroom, a good sized bedroom with a giant TV screen where you hit the real ball, hits the net, and then the computers simulate. And you can pick any top course of the world. The computer will take you to Augusta or wherever you want to be, and you play that course on the screen.
It's really nice. It's a TrackMan, which is like the best simulators. But the thing is that I think is so cool is that you don't have to go there just because you want to use the golf simulators. Like the bar area is awesome, and they have it all opened up. And so you just have this great view on the corner there. And I love how airy and open it is. And then on the second floor, they also have this one room that has the TrackMan, like the golf simulator, but also has a whole bunch of dartboards. And so you can kind of have the whole area. So if you don't have golfers, you could do a little dart tournament. I didn't want to leave. It looks so fun.
It's roomy and comfy in there too.
Yeah.
To have a drink and some snacks or whatever.
Oh, and Starbucks is open. Sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be that excited about that, but I am so excited about it. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love some of their non-coffee drinks. And my kids love it. And we go to Uncommon Grounds all the time. But as you know, the line there can be like 800 people long. It can. And there's just some things that you can't replicate from Starbucks. And I love how they've redesigned it.
I'm happy it reopened because it means that the Adelphi project is getting that much closer to the end. I was in there and I have a different thing. I'm not a Starbucks person. I didn't hate it, but I sat in there, Robin. I didn't know if I was in Seattle, Boston, or Saratoga Springs. It sort of took me out of Saratoga. I didn't like it. I'm not a franchise. But not all franchises do that to me. This one really did. I mean, it takes me like a lot of franchises. I know I'm still in Saratoga. That one, I didn't hate it, and I was, to your point, I was happy it opened because there was a time when I didn't want to be at Uncommon Grounds. And is it the Broadway Grind across from City Hall? Where we should give them a plug. Spot Coffee, we should give them a plug. Yeah. Would love to see Saratoga Coffee Traders come back. They closed their Schenectady location. And Walt Whitman is awesome. Whitman Cafe. Their egg sandwiches are to die for. So there's a lot of great places. But just so I'm not against Starbucks. It just doesn't do it for me.
Sometimes I just need an iced peach tea, green tea, lemonade. There's like 800 ingredients, and my kids need a cake pop, and it's easy. But I actually like how they did that big banquette thing in the middle. But anyway, we're coming up on an hour here. Should we do our cheers and jeers?
We should. Oh my goodness, I'm fired up for this one.
I know you are. In fact, we have
Created a visual aid.
We do. Let's bring in the visual aid. There it is.
Okay. Let me explain what this is. So I had some nice track seats for Saturday at the Belmont. A couple grandstand seats, which normally grandstand's not a big deal, but for Belmont it was. They cost me $420 because Ticketmaster added about 20% to my original cost, at least 20%, maybe more. And then my wife had to work, so I needed to move these tickets, and so I just offered them this morning at $380 each. And that'll give me a little bit of a profit. Not much though, because Ticketmaster told me if they sold, I won't get $380. If you look on the screen there, I'll get $293 each.
What?
Okay, fine. I still make a small profit. So Ticketmaster out of my will receive $86 for each seat. So it's like almost $170, $175 for one person. But that's not all. Because if you look, they posted the seats for another $44 over my price. So they're hitting me. Well, they hit me when I bought them. They're hitting me when I sold them, or when I'm trying to sell them, and then they're hitting the person that's going to buy them from me. Robin, it's back to. Am I still on the screen? Can you put me on the screen?
Oh yeah, I can put you on the screen. Hold on.
Yeah.
What assholes?
They're getting just from this sale. This is not including when I bought them, where they got an additional 20%. That is highway robbery. Oh my God, I feel really, really just robbed. And I had to do it. And, somebody say, too bad, so sad. But I mean, this is the same thing with Live Nation. And our friend Robert Mills brought it up that Live Nation and Ticketmaster are being sued by the federal government. And you noted that earlier, that for this, not just the price gouging, but, a monopoly on these things and so forth. So go at it, federal government. In the end, it won't matter. They'll offer me, if you fill out these forms, you'll get 48 cents back because you were wronged 5 years from now.
In the interim, this kind of makes me want to go work for Ticketmaster.
Yeah, or at least invest in it, right? Are they public?
No. Yeah. No, that is total crap, and it would piss me off so much.
Yeah, and I hope, and I don't think anything's going to change, but I wish NYRA and SPAC, because they're really the only game in town, right? They have to deal with Live Nation, probably. They have to deal with Ticketmaster, probably. But they are our local connection that of these two venues, and we're sort of stuck with both of them. And I wish they'd at least do, I'm being naive here. They're not gonna, but I wish they'd at least look elsewhere.
Well, I don't know why the track has to use Ticketmaster.
It is incredibly functional to quickly get money, right? The NYRA is not a ticket agency. They're a horse racing and bring in the experts. There probably are some up and coming starters, some competitors coming. I don't know that, but it seems like Ticketmaster has essentially a monopoly on this business. Remember, they used to have Ticketron. Well, that's gone, right? That doesn't exist anymore.
I do not remember that.
I couldn't tell you who else who else is a ticket vendor. What?
I mean, I'm always on. I know.
Are they exclusively second market, or are they first run as well? I don't know. I'm sure they are first run. Maybe SeatGeek. Okay, there are some, I guess.
I'm sure NYRA could figure out a way to use a different ticket seller. They definitely exist.
I'm sorry. Quick aside, they opened the Jim Dandy Bar yesterday. Kudos to NYRA. They did a great job. You can't miss it. They took out the bathrooms, put the Jim Dandy Bar right there, right when you walk in the clubhouse. You can't miss it. It's well done. New bathrooms, which is kind of weird to have shiny white porcelain bathrooms at the Saratoga Racecourse.
Yeah, well, if you're at the Jim Dandy, you're drinking, you gotta go. You drink, you gotta go. So, that is nice for patrons of the Jim Dandy Bar. I am not super familiar, but I am glad to hear that.
Okay, I should have given you the picture. I did take a picture.
I know. My track knowledge is limited. I love the environment, but I could not tell you to save my life where the Jim Dandy Bar is. Anyhow, that aside, I just hope I don't really have a cheer and jeer. Actually, I'm going to cheer Adam because I don't know where he went today. Adam, rude. But I just hope this is a great weekend. I hope the rain holds off. I have kids who are very, very excited to be selling water. One of them has a permit to sell it at the track. The other kids are going to be selling on our driveway. So I'm just hoping they make a couple bucks to fund their summer, and that everything goes off without a hitch, and that we get to do this again next year.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, my friend. I will see you next week.
Yes. So we are. Yes. Let's commit right now. We are. If it's one of us or three of us, this podcast will go next Wednesday.
Committed. 100% committed.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Rob. We'll try and get some nice guests on too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.